Hi there. Welcome to Have It All. I am your host and the creator, Anna K. Morris, and I'm thrilled that you're here because if you are here, it means that you're interested in having it all, or maybe you're curious about what I and my guests have to say about having it all. Can we? Do we know what it is that we want? And once we get it, are we wise enough to know that we have it? And are we worthy enough to hold on to it? That's what we'll be exploring on the podcast. I'm so happy you're here, and let's get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna K. Morris, and welcome back to the Have It All podcast. I am so excited to have my rhyming friend. Her name is Hannah. We've got Anna and Hannah today, Antonson, on the show to talk about, stuff, right? Not just stuff, but like actual stuff. Like you are a decluttering and organizational guru, expert, extraordinaire. And thank you for doing this. I don't normally do the podcast on the day of, but you were amazingly available. So it was the stars aligned and we were meant to be here together. So yes. I just want to introduce you, and you feel free to jump in and say hello to everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am a professional organizer and I love all things decluttering, and also my background is in health and wellness. So that is very much what drew me to organizing as a profession. I think that our home environments have such a huge influence on our health and well-being. And so that is why I focus mainly all about what your home looks like. How does it feel? How does it make you feel? How does it function for you? Mm-hmm. So that's my slant.
I love it. And I mean, just a quick backstory. Hannah and I met through dog walking. Right? As people do. At least people in my world do. Most of the people I meet come through somehow through my dogs, who are hopefully not going to snore too loud. They're sleeping underneath me right now. And then I've seen you on this evolution over the years into like health and wellness and to diet culture. And that was really interesting. And now into decluttering. And when I lead the Reconnect, my 12-week program, like early on, I think it's like in the second or third week, right? There's a decluttering part. If anyone listening is familiar with The Artist Way, Julia Cameron has it in her book where you declutter. And I have chills everywhere, which tells me we're on the total right track. And I just bought a house in July 2nd, with everything in it. And, most people don't do that. I don't recommend it. I've had people call me since I've done it. And they're like, hey, how did that go? Would you recommend it? There's this house I'm thinking of. Like, how did you do it? And I'm like, I would not do it again. And moving through that amount of stuff, I did not think through, because I didn't know the physical impact of it, but the emotional, the mental. And that's why I wanted to have you on today, Hannah, because I also just got back from Marburger, the, ticketed event at Round Top, where I just saw like so much more. And then fields and fields and fields of more stuff. Right. And so let's start with, and my podcast is called Have It All.
Right.
But I don't mean physically have it all. I mean,
exactly.
Feeling of fullness, of enough, of plenty. Right.
Yes.
So can you speak to, I guess I want to start with all of the stuff.
Yes.
Like, talk to us about the psychology of when we have so much actual stuff in our lives. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the physical stuff, the belongings, the items, the things, whatever you want to call them.
Treasure, we call them. In the collecting world.
Yes, in the collecting world, treasures.
Junk and some other
could be junk. Yes. There's tools, trash, treasure, and toys is a 4-word sort of acronym that we use or not an alliteration that is used sometimes in the organizing space. So it's a way of sorting your items. Something a toy, is it trash? Is it a tool? Or is it a treasure? And that doesn't mean that those are the only 4 categories that exist, but speaking to how much that impacts or changes how you feel in your space, every single sort of additional item is going to add or take away from your life in some way. And oftentimes, ultimately, we just do not do as much letting go as we do collecting. And
why?
I think
Doctor, I know you're not a doctor, but I'm just into the chair. I'm like, oh.
Yes. The simplest way, I think, is because we live in a very consumerist society. So that alone is we are exposed to so much culture and messaging around buying this next thing and it's going to make you happy. So we are essentially trying to buy our happiness, but we know.
Stop right there. Like, that's it. There's the mic drop. We are buy our happiness.
Right.
And it doesn't come with like a new necklace.
Right.
Right. It just doesn't.
Right.
It's so easy to forget that.
Very easy to forget that.
I remember when I was on bed rest with Dean, and Derek was like, hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but you seem to have a problem buying things on Instagram lately. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, is this another Instagram purchase that's in the mail right now? And then I realized I was bored.
Yes.
And I was more bored. And I just was like, had sticky fingers with my phone, like buying something. And then it would be nice for a minute. And then it would go away. And it's probably somewhere in my very oversized closet.
Right. Yes. And it is easier and easier to purchase things these days. Ads exist in more and more places, and we're exposed to it in ways that we are not aware of. So I also want to make that known so that we all have a lot of self-compassion for our tendency to purchase things, because ads are extremely manipulative, and it's not our fault that they work on us. They're supposed to work on us.
They're very effective.
Very effective.
I almost bought a watch this morning. I was like, why do I have a watch? I have it on right here.
Yes.
I don't need another watch. Like, I don't wear the Apple Watch that I have because I don't want stuff dinging at me all day long.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's so how do you, and I don't know, you might not do this in your business, but I'm certain you know how to do it. Because I know from our relationship how self-aware you are. So when that happens, right? Like, I want everybody listening to every episode of this podcast to like walk away and like have an aha and have it hit later of like, oh, I'm doing the thing that she talked about on the podcast, right? So when I go down a rabbit hole of something and I'm like just about to hit purchase, how do you teach people to be aware of that, especially clients that you're working with, you're already hired to declutter? I'm assuming you help coach them on like, hey, and also now let's not add more. And how do you teach that kind of self-aware? Not how do you teach, how can you help us be a little more aware of that? Like, what's a trick or a tool that you might have?
So for me, what seems to be the most effective is to think in that moment when you're just about to hit purchase, where would this go? Because right now it's imaginary. It's a what if scenario. And then if you try to ask yourself, to bring yourself next into that moment of reality of like, I mean, you used the example of a watch and then you said you already had one. So what, is it going to be 2 watches on your wrist, or what are you going to do with the old watch? Like, try to bring yourself then to that moment of, where's it going to go? If it's a larger purchase, a piece of furniture, even so recently, or a house.
I do like,
or a house. If you're Anna K. Morris, it's a house.
I'm trying to sell a house right now, and I was like, whoops, shouldn't have bought that house quite so quickly. Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's far more magical to imagine and to be in that moment of like, oh my goodness, now my life is going to change in so many good ways. And we just ignore the reality of what is it actually practically going to be like or feel like? And then in the physical space wise, where is this thing going to go in your home
Mm-hmm.
and in your space?
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like I just
oftentimes,
sold myself on the watch, though. That's the trouble. I'm like, I know exactly where it's going because I don't have a gold one. No, but I
yeah.
that thinking about it as like, where is this actually going to go? And do you play the game with yourself of like, what am I going to get rid of?
That is definitely an option for people who struggle is to say you cannot purchase something new unless you are willing and ready to let go of something you already have. It's also called the one in, one
What?
out
Yeah,
rule.
yeah,
And that works for some people for sure.
right.
If it sometimes works for clothing because our closets are often at capacity, and then we just try to shove more and more things in there without really taking a look at what you have and what you truly wear.
Mm-hmm.
And the one in, one out rule can be helpful with that.
Yeah.
It works better for some things than with others.
Like what? Like
I
clothing.
think I was actually going to say sometimes it works for clothing. Clothing is actually one of those examples where we can justify it. I mean, I would clothing slash jewelry. You were just justifying the gold watch because you don't have it in gold.
Gold one.
So I think we
And
we do the same thing with like shoes or a
oh,
skirt or whatever. It's like, well, I don't have this exact same thing. However, really what it is when would you wear it? Can you see a time in which it would actually be worn and worn regularly enough to make the purchase justified?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And those are deeper questions we're not asking ourselves in that moment when we're right about to click buy. But the more you confront and declutter your home, the more accessible those questions and answers will be for you. So I think it does come with practice. And ultimately, when I work with clients, that is when we have that conversation of your space looks and feels good now, but look at how much we had to get rid of to get it looking like that and feeling like that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that in and of itself is a very strong reminder that we are often not keeping up with the letting go this at the same rate that we are acquiring new items.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just watched it and participated in it and facilitated it as I sold everything from
Mm-hmm.
the house that we bought over the summer. And I was so thrilled to get rid of so many things. And because I've been on that train,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was really interesting to watch people buy and buy and buy. And some people in particular really like came and bought. And then, there are designers and collectors that I worked with and
Yeah.
shop owners. And for me personally, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious like how you've seen this happen in your business and in your own life. I lived out of a suitcase
Mm-hmm.
for almost 3 years. And then before that, I lived in New York in like
Right.
450 square foot apartment.
Yes.
And so I don't actually feel very comfortable with so much. And now I have a whole house, and what I sold was just what I wasn't keeping. There's
Mm-hmm.
tons in that house. I mean, you saw it before I
I
even saw
did.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Hannah's one of the people that actually saw it all on the floor, right?
Yes.
Like, was it still decorated for Christmas when you saw it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my YouTube channel and watch the video there. I've got a few videos of the house there, but they were actually cleaned up that you saw it before that even happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel sometimes like I can't think.
Yes.
Like if I'll give a smaller example that's a little easier to bite off of like my pantry. My pantry is driving me crazy right now because got a bunch of stuff in there. I'm not really sure of all of it. It seems like I can't throw any of it away. And I don't want to go grocery shopping because I cannot fathom putting anything else in that dumb pantry.
Yes.
But also, there's nothing to eat.
Right.
So, what is that about?
A pantry is a really good example, I think.
Please help. I'm like, this is actually a coaching call with me and Hannah, where Hannah coaches me through all the clutter in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. A pantry is a good example of you really need to know what you have in order for it to be functioning the way it's meant to function. If you can't see what you have in there, then you're going to buy duplicates or you're going to have food expire before you get to use it. And it's going to feel overwhelming and uncreative and like a mental block every time you look in or open the doors. So ultimately, our brains can't multitask. And so,
I'm always telling people this.
right. And we're used to going about our days with constant distractions. And so I think we can easily convince ourselves that we can multitask, but our brains don't, and they can't.
Derek tells me this all the time. I can multitask. I'm like, first of all, you're a man, so that's not possible. Of all, nobody can. It's physically
Nobody can.
Nobody actually can. And it degrades the thing that you're doing. I'm trying to teach this to Jack right now, who's almost 5. He was watching a show the other night and eating a snack, and then he wanted to look for Halloween costumes on my phone.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jack, can you see that like you're not going to do any of those things well because you're doing 3 things? You might be able to eat a snack and watch a show. I'll give you that, right? Like we've seen that happen in movie theaters. That's possible. I was like, but if you do that, you won't have a good quality experience and you won't find a great costume because you'll be distracted by the show and the eating. And he got it. Like he's 4.5 and he was like, oh, so when can we do it? And I said, tomorrow when Dean is napping and we're both available and the TV is not on.
Yes.
It's the only thing we're doing. And he was like, okay.
Yeah. So every additional item in your home is like having a TV show on in the background. I think that's a really good example.
That's a mic drop. Say it again, please.
Every additional item in your home is like having the TV on in the background. It is another distraction for your brain.
Yeah. I think it's part of why like lately I'm doing some redevelopment with my coaching business and I can't do it at the house. I have to go out in nature and then I write it in my car in the parking lot. Because it just all works there. And when I come home, it's like, I'm looking at this office right now. I'm like, why is that drone out? And why is that binder? You know, I'm now aware of all the screens open.
Yes.
All of the TV in the background. Right. And I'm like, well, no wonder these Post-its on the wall right here are totally like distracting me.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So simplification, I mean, to go back to the pantry example, it's like simplification is usually the route that I take all of my clients down. And that might look different. It might look like decluttering as much as possible and trying to let go of as much as possible. And that in and of itself is simplification. It might be a system that is more simplified. So it could be that when you're sorting items, you actually put things in order of how you use them versus what the space might dictate to you.
Right.
And then additionally, I always work with my clients on how their personalities correlate to how they use their home. Some people are a lot more visual. So if they can't see things, they don't really remember that they're there. So we need to do visual organizational strategies. Other people are far more distracted by visual clutter. And so we need to come up with more hidden strategies. So thinking about it just from the vastness of the items in your home, the less you have, the less you have to manage. And it taxes your brain less.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what you would say. Gosh, that really speaks to like every conversation that I have with women and in my client world, like the overwhelm everybody feels, right? It's just like so overwhelming. And what I find is that if I can, whenever I'm feeling that way, if I can clean up my desk, or if I can take an area, just like take an area, like for the estate sale last weekend, I just had my colors done, like for spring, summer, by this great woman in Austin, actually. And then I came home and I literally went and took out all of the things that were not vibrant autumn, which is my color palette. And I took it all out and I put it in the estate sale and I sold everything.
Great.
I was like, I have no business wearing these things because they don't look good on me. So I don't keep these things. And it felt fantastic.
I bet.
But I'm curious about how you get somebody to let go. Because the letting go I have found to be very challenging.
Yes.
Clearly in the home that I just bought, right? Like letting go was not in his vocabulary. And even like we're getting ready, we'll be moving when the house is done. And there will be things to let go of. And I have found, back to the pantry, that I think that I'll use it one day. So please. Sounds like a rabbit hole you're going to be amazing to go down with.
We love those what ifs, I need it one day scenarios. And I don't exactly know where that comes from, but I do like to, if anyone is interested in exploring this, just go back a few generations and see how long it takes for you to hit someone who grew up in the Great Depression. It's not that long. And we are still sort of recovering in a way from that keep everything you might need it type of mindset.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't your parent, it was maybe a grandparent, depending on your age, could have been great grandparent. However, that trickled down to everyone who grew up with that mindset. So there's a little bit of that I think perhaps is behind this, what if I need it sometime? However, we live in this day and age where if we need something, we can get it pretty much immediately. And
my son like a new Halloween costume because the next is going to be the right one. He wants to be a tiger now. He's like ordered it last night. He didn't. We did for him. We're not, psycho. And he was like, when's it going to be here? And I'm like, tomorrow night. He was like, that long? And we were like, dude, it's 24 hours.
Yeah.
That's not long. I remember having to go to a store.
Absolutely. And you only had access to the items that were in the store.
In whatever size they have.
Exactly.
Really, oversized tiger this year.
Yes. So it's odd that we do live in this world where we have access to almost anything in a very short time frame, and yet we also tend to get attached to the things that we have with this even if we're not using them, with this mindset of what if I need it one day. So I'm sure different people have different theories and why that happens for them, but it is one of the most common reasons that we use to justify keeping things that we don't use. And I encourage all of my clients to say, okay, if I'm working with a client right then, I'll say like, okay, can you give me 3 scenarios in which you would use this or need this? And it's really hard to come up with those scenarios most of the time. That usually can be a little bit of a reality check. But more so than that, I think what's motivating for us from a behavior change perspective. What's motivating is to look towards a future that is better versus trying to escape something that isn't working. So
Okay.
we're more motivated to move towards something better than we are motivated to escape something bad.
Right.
And it's a small shift in thinking, but essentially, in order to motivate someone, it's not like, well, think of all the space that you could have if you didn't have it. It's more to think towards what kind of a environment or a space do you want to have? What's your ideal house? Who are you now and who do you want to be in the future?
Mm.
A lot of letting go is allowing the past to stay in the past and to be okay that this was a version of you, but it's not who you are now, nor who you want to be in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, like it takes like just slowing down and
Mm.
being mindful. It's really sounding like, I know I'm thinking very specifically about like bed linens,
Mm.
only because
Mhm.
like we had so many iterations of where we were living for so long.
Yeah,
And the house that we're in right now is a rental. So like I also knew that like this wasn't permanent.
right.
And so, and then we were having kids. And so like that was all changing bed size and all
Mhm.
that. And I just like couldn't let go of like the queen size. We don't have queen size beds anymore, but like I couldn't let go of those linens because one day, and we're about to have that one day in this new house, and we might use those linens or we'll probably get new ones.
Right.
And then I kept those dumb linens for
Yeah.
like 7 years, like a long
Mm-hmm.
time
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
small houses that didn't
Right.
like really have the space to support it. But I was afraid that I would need it one day.
Right.
And it would have felt so much better to just have more space.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting what you just said, which is that you were afraid that you would need it one day. And there is a lot of fear in
Yeah.
letting go.
Yeah.
But what's more freeing is to actually, if those linens weren't even in your home, you wouldn't be
But,
afraid that you'd need them.
mm-mm.
The fact that they are there is the reminder of, oh, what if I need that one day?
Yeah.
If they're gone, you stop thinking about queen size sheets. Why
Yeah.
would you?
But I don't even have a queen size bed.
Right.
I have two. I used to have two. Now I have all these dumb linens. They're doubles for each of the beds. Now I have four sets of linens.
Mm,
What they are good for is building tents.
right.
So we have repurposed them. Right. So like
Yeah.
that's kind of good. Um, but it, it makes me think to go deeper down the rabbit hole of like creating space.
Mm,
And I know we've talked about this before, but like I quit drinking last year
yes. Yes.
to create space.
Right.
It really was like I needed more space because I just had so much happening that I didn't feel like I didn't know where to get the space.
Mm,
And I was like, well, if I have a glass of wine, then it's usually another one, and then it's a show, and then it's waking, and I could just see the whole thing, all
mhm,
from this one choice, right? And I think the
right.
same can be said for like all of the things that we choose to buy or don't get.
Yeah. Right. All the things that we choose to buy and all the things that we choose to keep. And I think that example of letting go of alcohol is another great example of how you actually, what you gain there is so much more valuable than what you've let go of.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It makes me think too, and I'm sure that you encounter this a lot, is like there's a letting go of like our identity,
Yes,
right? That's really what we're hitting upon. I'm like, let's just call it what it is.
absolutely.
Like, I really had to let go of myself being like the fun girl
Mhm,
having a martini in New York, like all of the ways that that I related to myself
mhm.
had to go.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was really scary to
yes,
like then not know yourself. And I think that we tend to look to stuff for that.
for sure. Yeah,
Like especially when it has come from somebody or like
yes.
family member. Speak to us about that.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like we hit a nerve.
Yes. So there's two things, but let's talk about when things come to you from elsewhere. So either they're a gift, maybe it's a hand-me-down, it's something that someone has presented to you of which you feel very obligated to be appreciative of. And then those items often fall into the category of guilty clutter. It's
Mm.
clutter that we keep around just out of a sense of obligation.
Yeah.
And letting go of
A lot.
guilty clutter.
Like, I think there was a lot in that house.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. When we are able to recognize that that's actually the only reason that we're keeping something, it gets us one step closer to being able to let it go.
Yeah.
And be careful when you're letting go of something that was a gift. Don't re-gift it to someone because you're just transferring the burden. You could be just transferring a burden
Mm.
because if it took you that long to realize that it wasn't serving you, don't just pass that along to someone else. Unless you know for sure that they are someone who maybe has asked you about it in the past. And you can always, if you're someone who prefers to pass things along, specifically to another person who you know, and you like to think that it's now living in their life somehow.
Yeah.
Just be careful because even if you ask someone, hey, I'm thinking of getting rid of this thing, would you like it? They're much more likely to say yes than they are to say no, because saying no can feel rude.
Mm.
So being honest about if I was maybe, I'm trying to think of a different scenario in which, like, if your friend walked into your home and knew that they could actually walk out with anything that they wanted, would that be the thing that they chose?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I have a friend that it's actually her birthday today, and we give each other things from one another that we think the
Oh,
other one would love.
yeah.
But it's part, I mean, like, so I have something that I'm giving to her, and there are these like very, very special earrings that I love.
Mm.
They're not my color.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are, no, exactly. But every time I see them, I'm like, they just look like her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, I gave my sister my favorite red dress because she always commented on it. She was like, I wish
Right.
I could have a red dress like that. And now she lives in Nepal, so I don't think she wears the red dress, but still, she hopefully still has it. And so it can feel really good
Yeah.
to give in that way, but
Mm.
not in a way of like transferring the burden.
Right. Right. Yeah. If
Right.
someone specifically says, oh, I love that thing,
Mm-hmm.
then you know that they would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I think gifting things too, you can also allow people, give them permission to be like, I thought of you, but
Mm-hmm.
also if this doesn't fit, know that
Yeah.
I'm not going to be hurt if it's not the
Right.
right fit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mean fit as in size. I mean, if it doesn't feel like them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone, and I think the other thing to consider with stuff in general
Mm.
is, what season are you in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like I went to Marburger on Tuesday, and I came home with a life-size tiger.
Oh, no.
That's the only thing I bought because that's the season of life I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, all I could think about was the boys crawling on the tiger. The tiger's name is Tina, by the way. So crawling over Tina, I couldn't even wait till Christmas. Right.
Yeah.
It made
Yeah.
no sense, but like, they're both in a tiger phase. They're going to be tigers for Halloween.
Mm.
And so that felt so good. And that was a joyful addition, despite
Right.
the fact that we have 1 million stuffed animals. Like, they're obsessed with stuffies. And that's just, we're leaning into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And also, where can they go when they're done with all this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, who will we be giving them to? I think that's the other thing that I sometimes struggle with, is like, part of why I have such a hard time letting go of some things, even though I'm naturally a minimalist,
Mm.
is like, I want it to go to a good home or somebody that will enjoy it. And that's why I loved having that estate sale, was like, I watched people have that's like the inside shopkeeper in me of like, I want people to like have these treasures to go home and be loved on. So what do you do when you don't know where that is? Or like, how do you help facilitate that for somebody that might be stuck as I've been stuck?
So I actually do all donation drop-offs for my clients when I do decluttering with them. Unless the only exception would be like, oh, I let my sister-in-law look through all my clothes before I send them on.
Right.
That's the only exception. If someone's really ready to get something out of their home, I try to make it as easy for them as possible. And I just tell them, I handle the donation drop-offs. I make those calls afterwards. I try to choose local charities that I feel are the best fit for those items or are in the most need of them.
So you're saying it's a crutch. So you're saying what I just did was a crutch.
It's making it one step harder. It's like adding one more step to the process of letting go.
Yeah, it's me just avoiding letting go. I got it. Message received. I'm like, if you're doing that, you probably are. Most people listening are probably doing that in some way, shape, or form, right? Like Derek does that. He'll be like, these need to go to a kid's charity. And I'm like, okay, well, right now they're in the garage and the kids keep finding them and they keep bringing them back into the house. And now we just have shit all over the garage because now you've spread the books and the stuffies and all the things. And like, I think a rat's in here. And then that, like, it's just a mess. But so that has been a real challenge to like, get it gone. Love that you offer that, because that part, I'm literally thinking of a huge bin in our garage right now of stuff that I just cleaned out, and it's just in that garage.
Right.
And I can't find a charity that wants it. So I think it's going in a clothing drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, what's it going to do?
Yes. And it's not doing anything sitting there. And I think that's the other thing too, is we want to feel good when we're taking items out of our homes. It's good for us just from a very selfish standpoint of, this is better for me to not have this anymore. But on another level, if you're planning on taking it to a charity, you feel good that your items are then going on to serve someone else. And oftentimes we have the best of intentions. You collect whatever it is that you're ready to donate, and then it rides around in your car or it lives in your garage for months or maybe years on end. And then
not years.
It's not serving anyone in that limbo space. And in fact, every time you look at it, you're probably like, oh, I have that one more thing to do. So it's one more item in your home that's adding distraction and obligation and maintenance and all of that, that's not simplified yet. It's in that middle space of you've made the decision, but it hasn't reached its final destination.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to put a bow on this because we've got to wrap it up. But you know what it's just smacking of is The Big Leap. So if you're not familiar with The Big Leap, which, you either are or you aren't, it's a great book by Gay Hendricks. Hannah and I have talked about it in all of our coaching sessions probably, but it's essentially that like we will self-sabotage, right? Yes. Like when we are feeling too good and it starts to feel like unsafe or wobbly. And what I'm hearing and what you just said is that like, I'm actually more comfortable. And it's a way for me to cap like my joy. And so it's about like that upper limit. And if you read the book or listen to it on Audible, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the upper limit syndrome of like, I can't even imagine letting myself feel that good. Okay, totally inspired me to now go get the boys and do a Goodwill drop off on the way.
Yes.
Of their things, and I can teach them about it. And
exactly.
Be like, this is what we're doing, and we're bringing these here because these shoes don't fit us anymore,
but they might fit someone else who really needs them. Exactly. Yeah. And I think teaching kids young is also amazing. I've worked with clients who do it really well, and I've worked with clients who really struggle with it. but it's such an opportunity to pass that on to your kids, because organization is actually a learned skill. Not everyone grows up learning how to do it. And those are the people who then become adults who really struggle and feel overwhelmed in their spaces. It's not their fault. They just never learned.
Yes. I will keep that to myself on that one. I have many opinions in my marriage about that, and I will just hush up about it. And thank you so much for being on today and for talking about decluttering. If you are looking for somebody to come and help you declutter and organize, and you're in the Austin area or anywhere surrounding, Hannah Antonson, I'll put your information in the show notes. But this is so incredibly necessary. I think it's so important. I just think it's one of the most important things we can do, because what I'm seeing as a coach is that like everybody is constantly overwhelmed.
Yes.
When we can reduce the amount of stuff and information that we're consuming on a cellular level in our homes, it just makes everything work and feel better. And that's what I think we all really want. Right?
Yes. Yes. We gain so much more clarity when we are ready and eager to let go.
When we are ready and eager to let go. Okay. So we're looking for clarity and letting go. And thank you. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be back with another episode talking more about this, and probably my experience at Round Top, which is a whole other thing. But thank you again, Hannah, for being here. And thank you for listening, everybody. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for being here. It is an honor and a privilege to have this conversation with you as we expand in the world. What is it that we want? Do we believe that we can have it all? I hope this episode gave you some insights and some things to think about, and most importantly, some actions to go and take in your own life. If one of those actions is reaching out to me, I'm so thrilled and honored. You can always find me on my website, annakmorris.com, and you can always send me an email, hello@annakmorris.com. DM, texting, if you have my number, any of that is great too, and I would love to be in touch with you and help you have it all. I love you, and thank you so much for being here.